are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to People Making Money. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about all matters relating to your profession, your work life, building a business, and building wealth. And hold on one second. I'm going to close my email so it doesn't keep dinging in the background. So as we head toward the end of the year, it's a time, I think, to take stock. So I know the end of each calendar year, I spend a considerable amount of time looking at the year that's ending, looking at my professional progress, what I achieved, what I didn't achieve, how I can go on to sort of, bigger and better things. Hang on just one second here. There we go. There's a weird thing going on here. Okay, well, I don't know how to figure it out. Anyway, and as well, it's a time to plan what's going to be happening for the future. So I remember this is quite a while ago now. When I had my real estate services company, I was sharing offices with one of my clients, and it was a father and son. The father was the age that my father was, or close to it anyway, and he took us out. He took his son and I out to lunch one day. And we were just kind of sitting and talking, and he was musing about how much more difficult business was at that time compared to when he was a younger man our age. And the competition was so much stiffer. What you needed to know was so much greater. And by the way, this meeting happened, I think, in the early 1990s, right? So 92, 93. So, we're talking about 30 years ago. And it's the business world has only gotten more so. Not only has it become more competitive, has the knowledge requirements have gotten greater, but also regulatory issues have gotten far more complex. Financing has gotten far more complex. So it's a challenging environment in which to deal. And so whether you're an employee, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a professional with your own practice, or you're within a practice of similar professionals, no matter what our place is in the workaday world, it's a challenge to keep up. And it can be very anxiety producing, I think. And I talk to a lot of military people coming off of active duty and looking to transition into civilian life. And there's a tremendous amount of anxiety there, especially because they are making this transition and they really don't know what life holds for them. Having said that, I think that's true of all of us these days. So many of the professions that exist today did not exist even 20 years ago. I have a friend who's a data scientist, and while there were probably people who did something similar in the analog world, decades ago, this idea of data analyst or software developer, software engineer, these are all professions that really were created during my lifetime. Okay, now I'm a bit of an older guy, but even so, there's all kinds of new things going on. AI did not, or what's really large learning models is really what that's really what AI is, at least right now. Those did not exist in any kind of significant way for most of us until maybe a few years ago at most. The internet was, you know, I was in business before there was an internet, basically. So I was listening to, a podcast yesterday with Mark Andreessen. He was talking about, he's the inventor of Netscape, which was the first internet browser that really made the internet accessible to the average person like you and me, right? So all of these changes have taken place in the last several decades, and it seems like the pace of change gets faster and faster as well. So as business people, as employees, as professionals, how do we keep up with all of this? And more to the point, how do we make sure that we don't get rendered obsolete, right? And this is the big discussion going on now. So it used to be, going through the 70s and into the 80s, the people who were concerned about losing their jobs were people who worked in manufacturing. So-called blue collar workers, automobile workers, and that sort of thing. As the automobile business globalized, and companies like Toyota and Honda and Datsun, which became Nissan, and the European car companies became ever more competitive within the United States, and also developed their own domestic markets, so that the United States car companies no longer dominated car sales around the world. The American car companies really faltered, and their production shrunk quite a bit, right? And so there were all kinds of predictions that there was going to be no, blue collar work anymore, that this was the end of any kind of work that would give any kind of decent salary without having a college degree. Well, here we are now, about 40 years later, 35, 40 years later, and now it's the people who have college degrees and do work like drafting trusts and wills that are really faced with a potentially cataclysmic shift in their professional lives, because large learning models and AI are developing very rapidly. And so the idea that you're going to pay an estate planning attorney, for example, well, it used to be upwards of $10,000. More recently was $5,000 to draft the documents for an estate planning package, a living trust, a durable power of attorney, durable power for healthcare, those kind of things. AI will be able to do that much more efficiently and quickly than a lawyer ever could. And candidly, who needs a legal secretary when you can go on an AI and you can put in the relevant things, like the name of the grantors and the name of the trust, and 10 minutes later you've got the completed documents. So I assume there are still legal secretaries still around, but these days I think a lot of attorneys draft their own documents. Now, when I was a law clerk back in the very early 1980s, lawyers had to have legal secretaries, and these were highly skilled individuals who could prepare legal documents, pleadings, etc., and could do so very accurately, because lawyers, they could not type nearly as quickly as a legal secretary, and so it made sense for them to maybe draft a document by hand and then turn it over to the legal secretary, who would turn it into a properly formatted document that could be filed with the court, or a contract that could be signed by the parties, etc. Because this is in the days before word processors and personal computers. So we had IBM Selectric typewriters, for those of you who remember them, with the little ball that would that the little ball turning was revolutionary for typing because it allowed typists to type much more quickly than a conventional typewriter where you had, each letter was one on the end of a shaft. So, I've also during my lifetime, I've seen certain professions essentially go away, like legal secretary. I wonder what's going to happen with paralegals. Are they going to be necessary anymore once large learning models reach a certain level of quality and such? I would say, anybody who drafts routine types of documents or does that kind of routine work really should be thinking about, how am I going to change my position within the marketplace in order to maintain my viability? Because again, anything written or picture wise that can be replicated, AI is going to end up doing it better than a human being. That's pretty much inevitable. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a necessity for people who know how to work with AI, right? So this is where I come to my topic for today, which is continuous knowledge and skill improvement. And this is the key quality that we have to develop in order to stay meaningful in the workplace, in the economy, right? So it's no longer a situation where we can get trained to do a job today and do the job for 30 years essentially the same way and retire and now we're done. Those days ended a long time ago. But the reality is today that we will probably go through many professional or career iterations over the time that we're working, number one. And number two, we may never retire, at least in the conventional way that it's thought of, where we stop working completely and now sort of enjoy our golden years playing with our grandkids and traveling and all that kind of thing. That may no longer be possible for a number of reasons. One is the demise of defined benefit pensions, where when you retire, you get a certain payment every month, and you know what that payment is, and so you're able to develop a lifestyle like that. Pensions today, outside of the government especially, are almost always defined contribution pensions, like 401ks, IRAs, that sort of thing. And so it's not, we don't know how much is going to be available to us at the time that we decide to retire, whatever that retirement looks like. So there's a level of financial uncertainty that my parents' generation, for the most part, didn't have. Excuse me. So here in the United States, what is going to happen with Social Security? So the fact of the matter is, as our birth rate has declined more and more, the number of workers making contributions to Social Security, and we shouldn't be fooled by the so-called Social Security Trust Fund. There is no Social Security Trust Fund. There's no big pot of money sitting somewhere waiting to pay us our benefits. Okay. Current Social Security taxes, what's known as FICA, Federal Insurance Contribution Act taxes, pay the benefits of people who are already receiving Social Security. That's how the plan has always worked. So when Social Security started, there were 8 workers for every 1 retiree. Now I think there's less than 3 for every 1 retiree. And the idea that it's going to drop to probably around 2 soon. So the idea that there are 2 people paying into the system for every 1 person drawing money out of it is not a financially feasible situation, at least given the current level of benefits. So the idea and Social Security, by the way, was never meant to be a retirement income. It was always meant to be sort of a part of a retirement income. It was meant to be a adjunct is the wrong word, but it was never intended that people were going to retire solely on Social Security. It was an additional retirement benefit that they were going to get. So all of these things mean that financially we may not be able to afford to retire the way the so-called greatest generation did, and even my parents' generation, which was kind of that in between generation, people born in the 1930s. They may very well be the last generation that can afford to have a retirement the way it's currently thought of. And so we're going to be working all of our lives. Also, there's lots of data that shows that retiring and doing nothing in terms of work isn't necessarily the healthiest way to live out our so-called golden years. That it's good to have the intellectual stimulation that comes from doing work. It's good to have the interpersonal connections that come from doing work, whether it's colleagues or customers, clients. All of those are very healthy aspects of human life. And so it may be that it's much better for us to continue working. Maybe we won't work full time, but maybe we'll work part time. And so for all of these reasons, we need to build into our professional and work lives continuous knowledge and skill improvement. And so how do we do that? That's really the key question for this show. And hopefully I'll give you some thoughts on that to help you answer that question. So the first thing I would say is you need to have a plan of how you're going to upgrade your knowledge and skills on a regular basis. It can't be haphazard. Now, for some areas, it's easier than others. So, for me, as a professional fiduciary, more particularly as a licensed professional fiduciary here in California, I'm required to take 15 hours of continuing education in order to renew my license each year. Now, it's tempting to just do something. So it's tempting to just do something that I can just sort of burn through and get credit for the 15 hours and just get it done with and not have to worry about it. And when I renewed my license the first time, I thought, well, maybe I'll do that. And then I realized, no, that's the wrong attitude to take. Much better to look seriously at places where I can take classes or do online education that will increase my knowledge, which makes me more valuable in the marketplace. So the more I know about administrating trusts, estates, handling probates, the better I can be at the work that I do. And the less likely it is that I'll get replaced, because if I can deal with more complex situations, it will be harder to replace me with some sort of AI based estate administration model. Okay. So that's one of the things I would encourage. So for any of you, for if you're a professional, you're a lawyer, an accountant, a real estate professional, a medical professional, someone in science, and you have some kind of license, you're required to carry a license, an insurance license, securities license, rather than taking continuing education that you can just sort of maybe listen to recordings in the background while you're going through your regular work and claim credit for having done your CE. Look for opportunities where you really have to engage with the material, and doing so will increase your knowledge base. Okay, so whether it's 5 hours a year or 15 or 20 hours a year, whatever that is, plan it out and look at where your profession is going. And so what kind of knowledge then will help you either go in that direction, if that's going to be fruitful in the coming years, or will take you in a different direction and allow you to do something different than most of the other practitioners do, and therefore give you an advantage in the marketplace. Okay, so I had a meeting just before doing the show, and I'm working with these are beneficiaries of an estate, and they're among the assets they're inheriting is a company, and they need to decide how they're going to handle the company going forward once they become the actual owners. And one of my colleagues brought up a very interesting point, and it's something that I had kind of thought of and sort of understood, but hadn't quite perceived in the way that he described it. So what he told them was the best way to look at any kind of business these days is to specialize, to find a niche where you can be the expert. And he said, but here's the interesting thing. Some people think that if you specialize, now you can only operate within that specialty. But the reality is, the way you're looked at in the marketplace is, if you have the specialty knowledge, it's assumed that you're also have very extensive knowledge of that area in general. So rather than overlooking you for a more plain vanilla service in that area, people will say, "Oh, this person's." So I'll give you the example that my colleague used. He's one of the top probate real estate people in the country. He's for sure the top probate real estate agent here in Los Angeles. There's no one who has seen more transactions than he has. There's no one who has the accumulation of data that he has. And he markets himself as being the LA probate real estate expert, which indeed he is. It's a legitimate claim on his part. Here's the thing: being an expert in probate real estate, people assume that he also is one of the most skilled people in real estate in general, right? So he's not buttonholed into only dealing within his specialty. He can do non-probate transactions as well, and indeed oftentimes gets called to just do a regular real estate transaction, because people realize that when he has this narrow expertise, he must also be equally skilled at general real estate transactions. So this is a phenomenon that we can all use in our professional practices and in our businesses. Okay, so in this case, you may have a business that, let's say you have a plumbing business. It's one of my favorite examples to use, because the tables are kind of turned now. It's unlikely that AI and large learning models are going to do away with plumbers. The fact of the matter is, we still need to get water into our house and waste out of our houses. And there's no AI that's going to do that. What's going to happen, I think, is AI is going to allow plumbers to work more efficiently. Maybe they'll be able to diagnose plumbing problems more quickly, more thoroughly, quickly, faster. And so AI will become a tool for plumbers, right? So the key thing then is if you're in the plumbing business, if you're a plumbing contractor, or maybe you're a plumber working for a plumbing company, how can you develop knowledge and skill of AI within your area of expertise to make you even that much more knowledgeable and skilled? Maybe you can develop a specialty in troubleshooting plumbing systems using AI, right? Now, if you're able to do that, there's going to be an assumption that if you're on that cutting edge of the plumbing business, you must be an absolutely outstanding plumber when it comes to everything else that's done in plumbing. Okay. So, again, I'll give you another example from the plumbing business. So, the main line for my house was it turned out it was leaking. It was an old what do you call it? Clay, ceramic line, basically. And so the plumbing company that I called, they were able to do the diagnostics and determine a couple of things. One, that the roots had caused the clay pipe to essentially collapse, and that's where the blockage was. That was number one. And number two, that unfortunately, because of that, they were going to have to dig up a certain area of the lawn, because there was no clean out valve, because of the time the house was built. They didn't put in clean out valves. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to have to trench the whole area all the way to the street. It's going to be, a mess. And they said, no, we have this technique where we can go and slide a liner pipe into the existing pipe in such a way that it will essentially recreate the pipe. And we only have to dig a hole on one end, and the other end we don't have to dig up a trench for the whole length of the pipe, right? And so when they were actually doing the work, I was watching for a little while, and I asked the fellow about it, and he said, yeah, we had to go through specialized training to learn how to do this. It was, I think he said it was like a week-long training, if I remember correctly. And that he showed me the materials that they were using. They were real, very cool looking stuff, right? And they did a great job. And the fact of the matter was, although it was expensive, it was not nearly as expensive as it would have been to have to trench the whole area, lay new pipe, fill in the trench, and all of that. Plus, the damage done to the lawn was much less, and so my landscape maintenance guy was able to fix that damage much more quickly, right? So it saved me money on that end as well. So here's an example of a plumbing company that was continuously improving its knowledge and skills such that it was staying on the cutting edge of the plumbing business. Okay. And they knew how to put cameras down the drain lines, and to do things, all kinds of things that they were able to do in order to separate themselves from just your kind of average plumbing company. Now, um, you know, presumably they're continuing to do that. Now, I'm not an expert in the plumbing business, as you can guess, but there are probably developments happening in that business that only people in the industry know about, and they're able to assess whether these are going to become viable products or viable solutions for plumbing problems, whatever, right? But these are the kind of things that need to be constantly engaged in. Now, in this case, while plumbers have to have licenses, to the best of my knowledge, there's not a continuing education component of having a contractor or subcontractor's license. However, there is a need to keep up with new techniques, new services, in order to keep one's business not just viable, but really able to service customers as efficiently as possible and keep competitive price wise. So as new technologies come out that require, for example, less time, so other companies can come in and say, oh, well, I can replace this line. It'll only take me an afternoon as opposed to a day and a half or whatever it took, the plumbers I did it. And so it would cost a lot less. And so if they can do the same quality work in less time, they can charge less and they can undercut other plumbers and increase their business, right? So all of these things need to be done to keep your business competitive. And that's across the board. So I've given you two examples, one for professionals who are required to do continuing education, and I recommend that you find meaningful continuing education that really will improve your knowledge, if not your skills. And we've looked at a business situation, in this case, a plumbing business, where there are new techniques out there, and the company owner sent his people to get trained on these new techniques so they could deploy them in the field and do the work more quickly, less expensively, and therefore maintain a competitive position in the marketplace. So for professionals and business owners, there are some obvious ways of developing a plan of continuous knowledge and skill improvement. Now, for people who are employees, so they are neither professionals in the sense of a licensed professional, nor are they the business owner. So, what do you do? How do you keep yourself competitive in the marketplace, right? Especially since doing trainings, for example, they may be very expensive and you may not be able to get time off of work. So, when do you do these kind of things, right? That becomes a big challenge. There's no denying that that's the case, right? It would be easy to say, well, so just pay for it yourself and go do it yourself. But so when, right? You work 5 days a week, you have family commitments, you need to be able to, get some rest, right? And these days budgets are strained, so where do the resources come in order to do these classes? So I think you need to look at these things in a couple of ways. And one is you may need to, in essence, sell your supervisor on the value to the company of getting you additional educational and skill training. Okay, so let's say you're in marketing, okay, and you do copywriting for marketing, right? Is anybody still doing that anymore? I assume AI has already taken over a large part of that business because it's so efficient for doing that, right? So what does AI allow a copywriter to do? Well, whereas a copywriter might have written copy for, I don't know, 5 ads in a day, now with AI, the copywriter might be able to write ads for 50 in a day or something like that, right? So if I were a copywriter, I would be looking at how can I build AI into what I do to become more efficient so I'm a more valuable employee because I'm much more productive than someone who's not using AI. Now, the thing about AI is, while I'm sure there are trainings around, what I found is the best way to learn how to use AI is to use AI, whether it's Chat GPT or some other. I use Chat GPT. That seems to be the one that's most broadly used in the marketplace. So I look for opportunities to use it in my work, whether it's helping me organize thoughts about something, whether it's to give me ideas. Excuse me. So, So one of the first places I used AI was to give me ideas for topics for my various shows. Because sometimes it is difficult to think of, another topic for another show, right? So I would go on to Chat GPT and I would say, give me 20 ideas for shows on administrating trusts and estates. And out of the 20, I might get 5 or 6, maybe 7, 8 that I thought were good ideas that I could, develop. And then I would use the AI to help me develop an outline of how I wanted to present a particular idea. Right now, by the way, I could have done that with this show. I chose not to because I wanted to speak more extemporaneously, number one, and number two, this is something that I deal with all the time. So I don't think I didn't feel like I necessarily needed a boost from Chat GPT to work this topic out. Having said that, I could have used Chat GPT to generate some ideas on how one can increase, how you can increase your knowledge, your professional career knowledge and skills, right? And by the way, I think this is what it would have come up with. First of all, several of the things that I've already mentioned, but also reading trade journals or reading online trade journals, going to conferences to meet with other people who do the same kind of work that you do. You can do those virtually now. Uh, Creating a group with other colleagues where you talk about challenges within your line of work. So today, no, it was yesterday morning. Yeah, today's Wednesday. Yesterday morning, I started out my day uh, in a we call them water. Well, the president of the group calls them water coolers. It was a chance for a group of independent trustees to get together and talk about challenges in the work that we do, right? So, this was the second one I've been to, and I plan to go there. We do them about once every 3 months, and I plan to go to them every time because in 1 hour, I can talk with a dozen or more professionals who have different experiences than I do. Some of them have larger practices than I do. Some of them are just getting started. And in this case, we had a woman there. She and her husband are just kind of getting started as private trustees. And she had a whole list of questions she was asking. And it was terrific because she would throw out a question and then several of us would respond to the question. Not everybody responded to every question, and for me, who's kind of a mid-level guy in some ways, so on one hand I could help her with some information. On the other hand, some of the questions she asked, the people who were more experienced than I did, they gave information that was very valuable to me, that increased my knowledge, if not my skills, right? So these are the kinds of opportunities that we can all take advantage of, whether you're a professional, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an employee. Look for a group like that, and if you can't find one, create one. Okay, there's this idea that, oh, I can't meet with other people who do the same thing I do because they're my competitors in a way, and I don't want to share information with them because then they're going to take my job away or my work away or whatever. I think that's the reverse of how these things should be looked at. I think the more we share ideas, information with other people, the better we become. We hone our skills, because one way of really embedding knowledge and skill in ourselves is to teach other people how to do it. I know over the years, I've taught one thing or another now for, let's see, it's been over half a century. And when I can teach something, that's when I know I really have mastered that skill. I've really mastered that knowledge set. So to start a group in order to help people build knowledge and skills in your area, in your, the area of your work, it is a great way to build your skills, number one. And number two, if you're running the group, right, that gives you a certain cachet because you must, on some level, be an expert because you're running the group. So give your group a name and put it on your resume. President of the um, copywriters knowledge forum, to use the example that I was using a few minutes ago, and get a half a dozen, 10, a dozen copywriters together and talk about how you use AI as an example to improve your productivity, to generate better copy, to generate ideas, all of these things. It may sound like, well, okay, well, so maybe that we've got, topics for 3 meetings. What do we do after that? No, that's not how it works. Every time you meet, new ideas, new topics come up that you can write down. You will never be at a loss for things to think about. Now, the fact of the matter is, you want to set the meetings for maybe 30 minutes to 60 minutes. You don't want to have a 2-hour meeting. First of all, people don't have time for that. Second of all, you want to end it while people, when with a sense that people have more to say, but unfortunately we ran out of time, because then people will percolate over this stuff, and when the next meeting comes up, they will have more to say. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to do it every month. You can do it like the water coolers I mentioned, where you do it only every quarter. Maybe you do it once a quarter, or maybe you do it every other month, so you do 6 of them during the year, and that's perfectly fine. And then that's just one part of your continuous knowledge and skills building. Okay, so I'm going to sort of review here, because I want to wrap things up in the next few minutes. So first of all, look for actual learning opportunities in the sense of online classes, or even live classes that you can take where you can interact with the instructor and the other students, that are relevant to your work, whether you're a professional, whether you're an employee, whether you're a business owner. Where do you need to build your skills? What is going to be your area of expertise, and where can you find it? There are so many organizations out there that teach classes, and teach wonderful classes. So if you're in anything having to do with trusts and estates, for example, the American Bankers Association has extraordinary training in that field, and in all other fields of banking, by the way, whether it's private banking, etc. That's just one example I'll throw out there. So look for those. If you're having trouble finding them, feel free to contact me. Drop me a note in social media, or my email address will be in the show notes. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to help you find a place where you can do formal education. And when I say formal education, I don't mean college, by the way. Most college education is not on the cutting edge, and so that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is educational opportunities that are dealing with the real world and keeping on top of the changes that are happening within your field. So that's one area. The second area is to look at what new things are happening within your industry, whether it's AI coming in that I've talked about several times, whether it's new techniques for doing your work, like in the plumbing example. Look for those, okay? And talk with other people in your field. What are the coming new technologies? Okay, technology isn't just computers. We think of it that way, but it's not. This system that the plumbers use to fix the drain line in front of my house, that's a new technology, right? Driverless cars are a new technology. All of those things, look for those and talk to people about which ones may become viable, or are viable, and you need to keep on top of, and then start using them. Now, if there's training that has to be taken in order to learn how to use them, take the training. Maybe as the business owner, you'll take the training and see if you think it's viable, and then send other people in your organization to it. If you're an employee in an organization and you learn about something, talk to the people who run the company you work for and say, hey, I'd like to go investigate this on behalf of the company and take this training. It's a 1 or 2 day training, whatever it is, and then I'll write up a report on it and give you an idea of what this is all about, and assess whether there's a benefit to our organization in more people getting trained, or whether I think, no, this is not really worth it. This is not going to end up being something of value for our company. So look for new technology that's being applied, and look for opportunities to use it and get trained in it. And then finally, create your own opportunities to interact with colleagues, with other professionals in your industry, where you can exchange ideas, where people can ask questions, where you mentor new people in the field, and where you have people who've been in it for a long, long time who can share their expertise, share their stories. By the way, you may want to start a show kind of like mine in your area that you deal with, talking about these kind of issues, and then you can invite people on to come and talk about them. And again, you learn from being the person hosting the show, whether it's an audio or a video podcast, whatever it is. So those are the ways that I recommend that you develop a plan of continuous knowledge and skills improvement. And it needs to be a plan, a written down plan. These are the things I'm going to do this year in order to increase my knowledge, right? So if you want to know what my plan is for 2025, it's to complete the 15 hours of continuing education I'm required to have to renew my license. Okay, and I'll do that through taking courses through Kaplan, which has wonderful online learning resources. And I'm also going to be taking some courses through the Independent Trustee Alliance, which also has courses, high-level courses geared specifically toward what I do. That's one thing. The second thing is I'm going to continue to produce three shows on professional topics each week. Trust and Estates Weekly on Mondays at 10 a.m. all Pacific time, 10 a.m. Pacific time. All my professional-oriented, business-oriented shows are at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So Trust and Estates Weekly on Monday, Business Lessons from the Military on Tuesdays, and People Making Money on Wednesdays. These are an opportunity not just for me to have a fun time talking to people and talking about ideas. They're an opportunity for me to learn as well as educate other people. And when I bring guests on, I learn from the guests. When I do a show like this, I'm hoping that I'm helping you learn something. And by teaching, I'm also learning, because those two things go hand in glove. And so as I develop my topics for my shows, those topics will often revolve around areas where I want to or feel I need to improve my knowledge and skills. Okay, so those are my two main ways. Oh, and sorry, and then I'll continue to attend the water coolers. I'll go to presumably 4 of them next year, once every 3 months, right? And then those are going to be the 3 ways that I pursue my plan of continuous knowledge and skill development. Now, I also have certain mentor-mentee relationships. My friend Bill, who's the probate real estate guy I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'll continue to reach out to Bill for one-on-one mentoring. We have kind of an interesting relationship, because in some ways Bill reaches out to me for mentoring as well. We have different skill sets, and so we share them with each other. So we'll continue to build our skills and knowledge by interacting. I'll continue to. I have other friendships that are also in some cases, mentor-mentee relationships. So my friend Michael, who knows a tremendous amount about machine learning, large language models. So I'll continue to interact with Michael on a regular basis to learn that. So that's my plan for 2025 for continuously building my knowledge and skills. Now, you may say, wow, how do you have time to do anything else? Well, it may sound like a long list, but the time that it takes to do each one, aside from my shows, which obviously take a fair amount of time, the other ones are specific times, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, that kind of thing, and sometimes they're after business hours, and so I work them in a way that's compatible with getting my work done as well. So, and by the way, if you're just getting started with developing a plan of continuous knowledge and skill development, you don't have to do 5 things the way I am. Just choose one thing. The idea is to choose one thing and habituate it so it becomes part of the rhythm of your life. Probably it's not going to be daily. It may be weekly if it's some kind of mentor-mentee relationship, or maybe it's bi-weekly, maybe it's monthly. Okay. But at least quarterly, I can't encourage you enough to engage in some kind of knowledge or skill improvement. Okay. So set a goal for 2025 that, if you haven't already done so, you're going to institute a program of continuous knowledge and skill improvement that involves at least once a quarter, okay, doing so. Now, maybe it's only an hour once a quarter. Okay. Maybe that's all you think you have time for right now. Fine. But schedule those into your calendar before 2025 starts. Okay. Maybe even plan them out, what they're going to be. And then when those times hit, do them. Okay. And then in 2026, maybe you'll go from quarterly to monthly. Okay. So the idea is to build this up year by year, so it becomes a part of your regular business, work, professional activities. Okay. So that's continuous knowledge and skills development. And I thank you very much for joining me. Had a couple of live viewers today, and one who joined in here just in the end. So I really appreciate you joining me live. Always fun to see that. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, please do drop them into social media outlets. The links are in will be in the show notes after the episode posts on YouTube. By the way, for if you're watching this not live, all of my shows now are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if for any reason it's more convenient for you to watch them on those other platforms, instead of YouTube, by all means, every episode starting about I think a month and a half ago or so gets uploaded to Spotify and Apple Podcasts now. And so I'll just go and search the Way to Wow shows, and you'll see the episodes as they come up. So that's another trying to make it easier for you to access my shows, and that's the latest development in that respect. If you have something of a more personal nature that you don't want to post on social media, you can always email me. As I mentioned, you can see my email address there crawling under the bottom of the screen. So I'll do my best to respond, always with the caveat that it's got to be something within my area of expertise. If it's some kind of technical question or something like that, I will do my best to refer you to someone else who can get you the answer you need. So thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. And this is my last show for this week, so a wonderful rest of the week. And signing off, as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my bell. Courage at all times, my friends.